Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction. Also for the invitation. You will see that my background is quite different from previous talks. I'm a professor in Ghent University in electronics engineering. And as well, since last year, I'm CTO and co-founder of Azalea Vision, a company in Belgium which is developing what I'm going to show you today, the smart contact lens. Today, I would like to introduce the smart contact lenses. A few years ago, I would have said that I want to talk about the future today, but this is happening today. We are making this. We're making all the developments in technology and in clinical trials to bring safe devices to people, to patients. And especially we do this with active light management, which I will explain in a moment. Then after that, I want to show some results of our simulation models in visual performance and the effect of illumination. And then finally, some conclusions and perspectives, and I will take some questions as well, if you have. So first of all, just one slide on smart contact lenses. This is a very hot topic in technology. You hear many different companies, the Facebooks, the Googles, trying to make these type of devices. There are really three main areas where they are focused into these developments. So first of all, you have biomedical sensing. So these are devices you can sense something from the eye. The first company making a product is Sensimed in Switzerland. They are able to measure the IOP of an eye with a soft contact lens. They are developing new generations and they are working on this type of high-tech devices. This is intended for one-day use only. Okay. Next to that, we have activities from Google. So they have initiated some sensing activities in how to measure glucose, for example. This has been stopped a little bit because you can measure glucose from the tear fluid, but this has a more or less half an hour delay from the glucose sensing you have in your blood. And for some patients, this is too long. So they have stopped with this type of development for the moment. Next to that, you have the next topic, which is augmented reality. This is also happening today. There is research in the US. There is also a startup company, Mojo Vision, in the US. They are developing enhanced contact lenses so you can actually display an image directly into the retina. And finally, and this is more related to our work in Belgium, we are focused into how to correct vision. So we develop different technologies, different platforms inside of scleral contact lenses, inside of soft contact lenses. And we focus on what we call the bionic iris, or something that is going to mimic the functionality of the iris. And this is what I want to discuss more today. So what is the concept? So we have developed through many, many years, more than 10 years, different technologies to put silicon chips, antennas, liquid crystal displays inside of a contact lens. So everything is very small, very flexible, very thin. And then the idea is to combine it with this type of bionic iris, which is liquid crystal cells that we can turn on and off. And this is going to replicate, as you see here, the opening and closing of the iris. So the idea is to bring back the functionality of an iris. And then if we combine these two things, we develop methods which are compatible with industry, so we can actually produce these devices and we can bring them to the market and to the patients. And we developed this together with Ghent University and IMEC in Belgium. So based on all this work, so it took us maybe 10 years to get to that point, and last year we launched this company. So this is a Azalea Vision company, and we really tried to develop the contact lens and to bring it to the market. So we use liquid crystals in order to reduce the amount of light. So really like a light filter that goes on and off automatically as soon as we detect enough light in the room. And also we can change the depth of field, as I will show in a moment. Inside of the contact lens, we have a little battery. So you can imagine it would be very, very small and thin. But this battery allows the lens to work for the whole day. And then at night you would just recharge it. Of course, we have also light detectors inside of the contact lens, so then it works automatically. And then one of the main reasons why we do this is to mimic the functionality of the iris, to bring some function back to patients with aniridia, for example, other iris disorders, but as well people with high sensitivity to light, like photophobia, people suffering from chronic migraine, dry eye, and other type of problems. So here on the right, I want to show you one of the user cases. So this is the device we are developing. We have a micro battery here in the corner, a special silicon chip for the light, and in the center, the liquid crystal part, which, as you can see, we turn on and off automatically. When the chip detects that it's too much light, then we can turn it on, it becomes darker. If it's dark, then turn it off, so then you can see better. And this just happens continuously throughout the day. So this product is being developed together with a smart case, because as some of you might know, we need to remove the lens at night, we need to clean it, we need to store it in some special disinfection solution. But then all this will be compatible with the device we make. And the technology we make is really inside of the contact lens, so it's not in contact with the eye. So we're also organizing clinical trials to start in 2024, both in the US and in Europe. And why this is important, this type of pinhole effect that we create, because you can think we can have just smart glasses that become darker. They already exist, some of them. But then what we want to achieve is what we call a pinhole effect. And this is actually naturally done by the iris and the pupil that we have. But of course, if the pupil is completely open, or if you don't have an iris, then you will have a very blurry image. This is purely from the optical point of view. And then as soon as you make a very small pinhole, in our case it's just a normal iris and pupil, then the image will become much more clear and sharp. So this is one of the benefits of using this device, to be able to recover some of the vision that some patients have lost. Now on the optical model, so we did several studies, scientific studies, in order to measure the contrast, how dark can we make this liquid crystal, how transparent and how fast can they be. And then we learned that we can have, for the moment, some contrast of 1 to 2, 1 to 4, so we can reduce the amount of light by half, or by more than half. And then we have these type of devices that you see here in the corner. So this is actually an active prototype, where we have a lamp here on the top, we shine light, and then you can see how the rings, they just turn on and off automatically. Of course, we can program this per patient. So the idea is to include this inside of scleral contact lenses, and to go to the fitting process, to have the lens in the person's eye, and then we can program how sensitive to light is the patient, so we can actually control how much light enters the eye. At the same time, the contact lens and the liquid crystal, they protect from UV, so we will have also UV filter to protect the eye, and especially the crystalline lens of the patient. Then the question is, does it enable this effect that we wanted to show? And then we did several tests, first in the lab, trying to measure what is the sharpness of the image we can see through the whole stack of materials. So in this case, we can see the letter E without any contact lens, and then we have a high transmittance, so the contrast is very high, black and white. Then we put the contact lens when it's off. We have a transmittance of 60%, so things are becoming a little bit darker, just because of the different layers that we have. And then finally, when we put the lens on, then we have a transmittance of 30%, so we can reduce, again, more than 50% of the light. And then the question, again, is does it help with the pinhole effect? So this will help with the amount of light, which is already good. We can also remove UV light, which is also good. And the next question is, can we help somebody to see better? And then the answer was yes. So we did another study that we published in 2020. We did quite complex optical simulation in a program called CIMAX. So we actually took data from the University Hospital in Madrid, from a patient with aniridia. So here we can see an OCT, so the cross-section. We have the cornea, we have no iris and the lens in the middle. And then using this sophisticated model, we can actually simulate the vision of this patient, only considering, of course, the geometry of the lens and the dimensions of the eye. So on the picture on the right, you can see how this patient would see at some distance at the letter E. And then we start to do simulations. What if we put the contact lens and we start to decrease the size of the pupil? Then in this case, we have a 6mm diameter, and then you start to recognize the letter E. And then we start to close down the diameter until we get to 2mm in diameter. And then you can observe two things. First of all, the image becomes darker because we have less light coming to the eye. So this is one of the advantages. And of course, clearly, we can start to see the letter E coming back into vision. And this is happening for two reasons, which I will explain next. But this was the first confirmation on a simulation first, before we go to clinical trials, that this type of device would help for some patients. So then how do we start to analyze further? One of the things that we were looking at were the optical aberrations the patients have. So of course we're making the pupil smaller, and that's good because the depth of field becomes bigger, then you can see better. But also we are reducing the optical aberrations. So when you have a pupil which is completely open, when you miss the iris, for example, the light goes to the whole area of the cornea, and the cornea is not a perfect lens. It has a lot of different defects and aberrations, and all of that is going to your retina, so then the image is quite bad. But then if we start to design contact lenses with a correct correction, a spherical correction of the smart contact lens, then we actually saw how we could reduce and remove the optical aberrations, just because the fact that we were removing the area where the light was going through the cornea. So then we have three effects. We have less light, which is good. We have the pinhole effect, which increases the depth of field, but also we remove optical aberrations from the large area of the cornea. Then finally, what about the depth of field? So then we continue our simulations, and actually we try to do it a different amount of light. So 1,000 candela per square meter, 10 and 1. So this is bright, medium, and then this is just dark. And then we saw something very, very interesting as well. When we don't have any contact lens, then we have, we measure two things, the visual strength, which is actually a quantity to represent how good or bad is the quality of an image perceived by the patient, and also the depth of field, in order to also compare these different situations. So then the visual strength is actually the magnitude of these peaks. The higher, the better. And then when we don't have any contact lens, then we have a curve that goes only until this height over here, so relatively low for the patient we saw before. And actually when we start to put the smart contact lens and we do the same, we close the pupil 5, 4 until 2mm, then we saw how the visual strength, so the quality of the image was actually improved. And of course this is also observed here. We can see that there is an improvement, but with these plots we can actually measure how much is that improvement. So actually we found that at high illuminations there was a very big improvement, so more than 100% higher quality. If the light is a little bit darker, then we had a little bit less than 100% improvement, but it's still better than not having any device. And then finally we also measure the depth of field, and this is going to be actually measured by the width of these peaks. And again, the wider the better. Then you will see clear and very sharp many images. And then we also saw that at high illumination, so 1,000 candela, then we were actually getting 3 diopters on top of what the person already had. So that means that we have 2 and 0.75 diopters more, and this actually enables to help patients with presbyopia on top of that. So we're still making different simulations and understanding how this can help the patients, especially with aniridia. We're in discussion with doctors in Belgium, but also in Europe. And then, as I mentioned just before, this is a reality, and we are working on it. We started the company last year with $10 million funding to be able to reach the clinical trials by 2024. So as a conclusions and perspective, as I just said, there are several startups, companies where they get venture capital funding in order to make this type of crazy or futuristic devices, but to help the people. This is a medical device company, so we have to follow all the medical trials and of the regulations. Focus on the optical model. We were able to show that this device reduced the amount of light, which is good. Also can remove UV light, but then the depth of field was increased quite a lot, and also the optical quality was improved more than 100%. Then finally, as next steps, as I mentioned, we are continuing on the development of this technology. So there's a lot of different components, different technologies. We work with a lot of different companies in Europe and in the US. And then we would like to reach, this is the plan, to reach the clinical trials both in US and Europe by 2024. And of course, after all the safety and biocompatibility tests are passed. With this, I'd like to thank you again for the invitation and for your attention.